Hey guys, welcome to the High Level Podcast. We are releasing a new segment to the podcast so that you guys can hear from us each and every week. So we are still going to be doing the longer format podcasts each second week, but we will be filling that interim week with a few small news stories that we find interesting in South Africa in terms of engineering, physics, whatever breakthroughs are going on. And this is the first of that episode. So thank you so much for joining me. So yes, let's jump into our first story that I have for you guys, which is that the previous head of engineering at Ex-Prasa has been sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for lying on his CV, basically. So quick credit to Denai Nesta Kupemba at the BBC and Nkululeko Njilo at the Daily Maverick for compiling all this information. But yeah, guys, this is a real story of caution, especially for engineers out there who are doing things in the engineering space and probably getting very highly paid for it. So for those of you that don't know, Prasa is the passenger rail agency of South Africa, and Daniel Mthimkhulu is the guy who got sentenced for lying on his CV, and the lying on his CV actually led to him becoming the head of engineering at Prasa. And basically he was the poster boy. He was the poster boy for black excellence under the governing body of the ANC. Many articles were written about this guy is who we want as a role model to younger engineers, people who believe in the ANC. This guy was the poster boy. And unfortunately, it didn't go out too well. But for being the poster boy of the ANC, he managed to pull an annual salary, are you ready for this, of about 2.8 million rand at Prasa. So on his CV, he actually claimed a few qualifications, but I'll give you the biggest ones here. So firstly, he claimed that he got a national diploma in mechanical engineering from the Vaal University of Technology. Then he apparently went on to study mechanical and maintenance engineering degree at the University of Witwatersrand. And then he even moved on to complete his doctorate in engineering management at the Technical University of Munich in Germany. However, when he went to court, the court in Johannesburg found that he had only completed his high school education. That's right, guys. He only had a matric. And again, he was arrested in 2015 after his web of lies began to unravel. He started at Prasa in about 2000 and he quickly shot up in the ranks due to his amazing qualifications. That landed him the job about 10 years later as the top engineer, the head honcho. And as the head honcho, the chief of engineering at Prasa, he managed to get paid an additional just over 7 million rand over that period. And that equates to a monthly salary, guys. If you guys want a big salary, this is where you got to go. 112,258 rand a month. So let's go through for this big salary. What were some of his biggest failures? So the court found that he had actually forged a job offer. This is amazing. He forged an offer from a German company, which basically said that this German company was ready to hire him for an annual salary of 200,000 euros. And that equates to about 2.8 million rand. At the time, he was earning about 1.65 million rand. So this would have been a substantial raise for him. And in order to retain him, Prasa matched the offer, nearly doubling his current salary at the time, and it was all fake. He forged the letter, wasn't real. Another big one that he did, him and his team in 2013 acquired 13 locomotives from Spain for about 600 million rand, and unfortunately, these locos were a bit too tall for the South African infrastructure. So yeah, that's an unfortunate one, but that was 600 million rand of taxpayer money. So there's been a bit of infrastructure that's need to be done. Some of the platforms at rail stations need to be raised and things, but you're not a very good one. And to me, not a very, it's not like you don't need to be an engineer to just check that the train height is right. But anyway, that was one of his ones. And then he also never mentioned that he didn't have a PhD, because apparently at some point someone assumed that he had a PhD, and he never corrected them, and he just sort of went on with it. So in an interview in 2019 with ENCA, Mthimkhulu admitted that he didn't have a PhD actually. And this was his response. He basically said, I failed to correct the perception that I have it. I just became comfortable with the title. I did not foresee any damage as a result of this. So he's used to lying. A spokesperson for the Horts, Lieutenant General Seswanto Godfrey Lebaya, welcomed this prosecution, and he said that this should serve as a lesson to all would-be fraudsters that crime doesn't pay. So guys, this is coming out of a lot of the state capture stuff that was happening under the ANC's watch. The spokesperson for the National Prosecuting Authority said that the court took into account the seriousness and the prevalence of the fraud and the significant financial loss to PRASA and Mthimkhulu's betrayal of his employer's trust. So Mthimkhulu was sentenced on Tuesday, the 3rd of September, and again, he was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment, and apparently he is planning to appeal the decision, as I would as well. That's just strategic in what you do. But again, guys, for the engineers out there, for anyone holding high-ranking positions, it's not worth it. If you're in that situation, I don't know what you should do. I'm not going to give you advice. But again, this is taxpayer money. This is people at your job paying for things that you've done. It's a terrible, terrible place to be, and we need to act with integrity, and we need to respect those around us. So yes, the ex-head engineer of PRASA sentenced to 15 years in prison. So my second story for you guys comes out of the PGM space. So Implats, which is Impala Platinum, listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, says that they are positioning themselves as the go-to supplier for PGM metals in the green hydrogen space. Now, for those of you that don't know, Implats has operations in South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Canada, so they're all over the place. And they didn't have very good results, so they're looking at holding back some investment. But they did say they are looking into the green hydrogen space. So in an interview with Mining Weekly, Sifiso Sibaya, the group executive for refining and marketing, he basically went on to say that their focus is going to be within the green hydrogen space. And he says they're keen on two aspects. One, to become a dominant supplier in the market for electrolyzers, as well as for fuel cells. So they see big opportunity for these types of technologies. And as far as consumption of green hydrogen, he says, is concerned, it can be pointed out that we've been consuming gray hydrogen for many years in our direct reduction processes for refineries. So he even sees space within their actual operations to move over to green hydrogen. Now, the Implats CEO, Nico Muller, had this to say. He said that hydrogen had been the quiet brother in the corner. And the issue is, are we doing enough to advance the technologies that will benefit our industry? And our view always concludes that we should be doing more. So they basically want to grow the green hydrogen space. So they've done a few bankable feasibility studies, and they are ready to implement a 140 megawatt renewable energy facility to provide clean energy to its Rustenburg PGM operation, as well as a 30 megawatt renewable energy facility for its Marula mine. And they've also managed to commission a $37 million renewables project, generating about 35 megawatts at their Zimbabwean operations, right next to one of their processing facilities. At the same time, they've also signed some contracts with a big hydropower supplier, Zesco, in Zimbabwe, to take off some hydropower, which they also view as a renewable energy. They say that a whole bunch of this combination is really going to lift their use of renewable energy consumption, as in Canada, they're already apparently running off 100% renewable energy. Let's get a bit into the results for you guys. And if you are an Implats shareholder, my heart truly goes out to you. Their headline earnings dropped 87% compared to the last year at about 2.4 billion rand. They took a loss of about 17.3 billion rand in the last 12 months through to June, compared with a 4.9 billion rand profit in the previous year. And according to Implats, there was a lot of factors at play. A lot of it was a drop in PGM prices. They saw that overall PGMs fell by about 30%, including a 39% drop in price for palladium and a 63% drop in price for rhodium. And overall, their numbers don't look too worrying because their overall production is actually up 2%. So this is really just a pricing game. Now, to end this off, if you are an Implats investor, I thought I would just put some numbers to this. If you had invested 100,000 Rand in Implats 3 years ago, you could open your stock portfolio today and view your 100,000 Rand investment down to 37,000 Rand, losing about 62% of your initial investment. Now, I don't think it's going to always be that way for Implats. I think it's just a bad pricing thing going on at the moment, but not great results from Implats, but nice to see their drive into green technologies. Okay, guys, then my final story for you today is a really, really cheerful one. There seems to be a little bit of hope, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel for Transnet. So here, credit to Skalk Berger of Creamer Media, writing for Engineering News. And this marks a really, really cool amount of reform, a good amount of transformation in Transnet, because not only we as South Africans are celebrating 163 days without load shedding, but we're getting some good news out of Transnet. Finally, I think this is a lot of relief for a lot of South Africans who have just noticed a lot more trucks on our roads. So basically, the Group Chief Business Development Officer, Yolisa Kani, said that Transnet itself will be opening applications for private train operators to start using Transnet infrastructure as early as next year, 2025, April. And she basically says that there is an addressable market share out there, but the challenges of insufficient rolling stock and unsuitable infrastructure mean that we, meaning Transnet, are unable to capture this market, which resulted in a lot of rail-friendly freight moving on to the roads. And as any South African, you guys would be able to preach to that fact. So for those of you that don't know, Transnet has been trying to recover its operations in the next 18 to 36 months, and they hope to reform the entirety of Transnet within 5 years. And they attribute this to 3 main pillars, which we'll talk to quickly. So the first is being that they just want to fix and optimize the business, basically get it up to where it was, and they call this a technology-driven plan. Their second pillar of investment strategy is to invest in transformation in sort of the way that Transnet operates. So Transnet is basically separating its freight rail business into 2 separate business units, one that's really just concentrated on infrastructure management and the other as a freight services operator. So the freight part of the business of Transnet is actually the biggest part of the business. It contributes about 39.1 billion Rand to the group's revenue. And in the last year, they've managed to move about 152 million tons of freight against a target of 155. Now, it's not a lot in the bigger scheme of things, but what it does show is there's not a continuing decline. So they've managed to stop the decline in Transnet, sort of keep the bleeding back in, heal up the wound, and now they can start pushing to start increasing those numbers. Then we move on to the third pillar of Transnet's investment strategy, which is basically to expand their operations, to help the economy grow, all those wonderful things. They've got a few projects in the pipeline, such as a liquefied natural gas terminal, and as well as a new container terminal being built in Richards Bay. So some really, really, really good news coming out of Transnet. They've managed to stem the bleeding, which is awesome. And at some point in the next 3 to 5 years, they're going to start looking to expand infrastructure. So the real question becomes, is Transnet capable of doing all of this stuff themselves, or are they happy to invite competition? And actually, we got a statement out of the Transnet Group COO, Solly Letswalo, and he basically said that Transnet welcomes competition on the rail network because he says, we as Transnet can't do this alone. There is an addressable market share that can be more efficiently moved by rail, but private sector companies can help to close any gaps that we cannot efficiently close, which is a very different stance to what Transnet had in the past. They also see that if they start opening things up, they can start to increase GDP. Estimates range from about 0.5% to 2.2%, which is really, really awesome to see that we've got some really good news coming out of Transnet. However, here it comes. There's always a cost to these things, right? They think the estimates are that Transnet will require 50 billion Rand over the next 5 years to address just the maintenance backlog in the rail network. And I'm sure that number will climb over time, but I will keep you guys up to date. Additionally, its high logistics costs are linked to sort of inefficiencies built into the system. And this is because a lot of the stuff has now started to move over to trucks, and guys have invested a whole bunch of money in their logistics companies in buying trucks. So it's going to be a very difficult political situation to also try and attack. Just to sort of put it into perspective how less efficient trucks are, one coal train can transport a similar load of about 400 coal trucks. One coal train can do 400 trucks. But the problem is with all those trucks, it destroys road infrastructure as well. So like I said, it's going to be very careful stepping the Transnet's going to do. But I think for the normal, everyday South African and to our international partners, this is really, really good news. So finally, guys, to cap off this section, the Transnet Commercial Strategy Executive Manager, Mthimkhulu, says, as we work to recover the business, we must keep in our minds that the aim is to improve the performance of the rail network to enable the economy to become more competitive over time. He says that we've had some teething problems. There's been a lot of crime and vandalism challenges, but they are getting some traction in their recovery program. So again, guys, I will keep you up to date. I'm sure the story is going to develop sort of week by week, month by month, but I'm really excited to see the direction, at least the intended direction for Transnet. I think it's really good for South Africans overall, for our government, for our people, and for our international partners. So guys, that's it for this week. I'm going to leave you with one obscure quote, I think, in these episodes. I think it's just a nice one to let you go on your way. My obscure quote this week comes from the credo of the Navy SEALs. Apparently they have some credo that they read out to each other, but I thought it was really, really cool. So this is an excerpt from the credo of the Navy SEALs, where it basically says, I will never quit. I persevere and thrive on adversity. My nation expects me to be physically and mentally stronger than my enemies. If knocked down, I will get back up every time. I will draw on every remaining ounce of strength to protect my teammates and to accomplish our mission. I am never out of the fight. I think it's really beautiful, guys. I think it's a statement of solidarity. It's a statement of there's something bigger than me out there. You know, there's someone that I need to protect, whether it's your family, it's your friends, maybe it's just you by yourself, but you strive on because there are people out there, whether you know it or not, that depend on you, and that you're never out of the fight. There's never anything too big that you cannot address, because you know what? It's in you and you've got this. So just keep your mind open. I really love you guys. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end of the episode. Again, if you want to reach out to us, it's at High Level Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. You can send an email directly to High Level Podcasts. That's podcasts with an S at the end at gmail.com. Feel free, reach out to us, guys. Send us feedback. If you have not subscribed to this podcast yet, would really, really appreciate it. If you're in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast, hit that subscribe button so that you always get us at the top of your feed every time we release a new episode. Thank you so much, guys. None of this would be possible without you. Thank you so much for listening, and I will catch you next